probably most of you know by now that that is asset inventory is included as part of one of the HPH CPGs. And in it specifies unmanaged devices, not just IT devices anymore. So it's IoT, building management, medical devices. And as you look at this, it's the NIST CSF and the CIS Top 18, all of the frameworks say, what's your hardware? What's your software? What's on your network? So Barak, why is that so important to identify the assets as like a number one step? And how do we do that here?
It's a great question. I think what happens is a lot of folks have access already to things like IT tools. You have your SolarWinds type products or firewall products, and they give you a kind of, I would call it a certain level of view into devices. Really good view usually of managed devices, things that have a persona where somebody logs in. Where the difficulties become apparent is in unmanaged devices like you're speaking about, things that are medical in nature, OT, even IoT devices, where nobody actually logs into the device. It's attached to the network. And there's a certain inherent risk around that because they have processing power and they have hard drive space and they can process things. We have to take an approach in that world to understand what these devices are with granularity so that you can take actions. And the actions can be any number of things. It could be I'm trying to do segmentation, right? It's hard to segment something if you don't know exactly what it is. Or maybe you're trying to improve its task on a network, give it priority. Well, you can't do that if you don't know what the device is. Or you need to do threat intelligence. I don't know what this is, but it's doing something unusual. So the building blocks for pretty much everything that a network person, a security person, a biomed person is, what is that device? And very specific details around that device. And so we do a very good job of looking at medical, OT, IoT, and IT, and we understand those devices by doing parsing, deep packet inspection, so that we can understand truly what the device is based on how it's just communicating on the network and pulling out pieces of information from those kind of like network flows of traffic. If I look at one specifically, and the one I always like to pull up because it's a very common device inside of healthcare organizations is an infusion pump. Often IT tools will look at this and say, this looks like the IP. I think I know where this IP lives normally. I see this MAC address, and that's like an identifier by the manufacturer. And this can be a false identifier. That's the problem. So most IT tools will look at this and see a Zebra. Could be a Zebra printer, could be a scanner. In this case, it's actually an infusion pump. So if your IT tools are looking at this, it is easy for them to make wrong decisions. So the granular details that we talk about and why it's the building block is because we know this is not actually a Zebra printer. It is an infusion pump by Alaris. Here's even the model number. From that traffic flow, we can see the model number. We can see the serial number. We can see the current software version. These building blocks are what allow you to take kind of biomed use cases. I want to understand my responsibilities around CMMS platforms. I want to drag things into it. It tells you when you have something you can remediate. There's a patch out now for this. I can correlate that for you. Okay, those granular details, vital to the building blocks of essentially every use case we see in hospitals. So it's very specific to a hospital kind of world.
I like how you said that really everything else, vulnerability management, network segmentation, everything, all the mitigations really are predicated on an accurate inventory with granular data. And I think that's one of the reasons that we're best in class 4 years in a row. Again, a top prize in healthcare but we are dedicated to healthcare, and I think that's a testament to that. We're also working with the Department of HHS on the landscape analysis, which is really gathering statistics across all different types of entities in the healthcare space and determining what the top 3 attack vectors are for healthcare, 1 being social engineering, 2 being known exploitable vulnerabilities on internet-facing devices, and 3 being the risk of a third party logging into your hospital. And so that is not well controlled. While we have a product called Secure Access for that, I really want to focus on the second vulnerability where hospitals are getting penetrated on the known exploitable vulnerabilities on internet-facing devices, and just kind of maybe use that or something similar to it as to how does xDome facilitate vulnerability management and leveraging that type of visibility.
So I think the beauty of a platform like ours is we sit in the network and we're passively looking at traffic. We're not actually going towards this device and trying to figure out what's it up to. We're not out in appliance sitting in the north-south boundary, right? Something like a firewall where the limitation is that's as ingress and egress from an area of the network. We're looking at traffic east-west, all places. So when you talk about devices and vulnerabilities around them, and I'm going to drop down a little bit in here and kind of talk about that vulnerabilities that we look at, because we're able to see that traffic as it flows across the network, east, west, north, south, okay? And we know all those granular details around the device, right? We know software version, model. We can correlate and look for the vulnerabilities that are attached to this device and give you a confirmed status, right? This is confirmed that I have this problem. At the same time, while we're kind of looking at these devices, we're also taking a kind of a look at, do I have like functionality recalls around this device? Is this device communicating with the internet currently? And when you put all these pieces together, you get essentially what we call our adjusted vulnerability scoring, which says to me, this is a critical issue for you. It's exploitable, maybe. I see a functionality recall. You have outdated firmware, and you have these susceptible CVSS scoring around a device. This is the criticality of this device and where action should take place. And we do this across the breadth of all devices on the network that we're seeing. Medical, OT, IoT. Is it exploitable? Do we see it out in the wild that there's an exploit that's available? Are we seeing internet connectivity to this device? Is it with other devices that it shouldn't be, like in a mixed VLAN, something where it makes it unsafe? So we're doing all those things together, and then we're building that kind of exposure management around that device. How can I best protect this device?
Well, with so many devices out there, I mean, some hospitals have tens of thousands of devices, and they're not all stationary like the radiology systems. How do you manage tracking all of those devices?
It's a great question. And we have things built into the system that kind of give us ideas of where that device is, where it was last connected. The use cases for this are kind of, they're actually very large. For biomed teams, right? I need to do work on this device. There's something maintenance scheduled for this coming up. Where is it located? We're trying to alleviate the amount of work and traffic that folks have to do by hand, right? We want to dynamically allow them to see where this device was last located on the network. Where can I go find it, right? So we integrate with things to give us mapping capability. For switch port location, something that's maybe wired, we do that as well. So what switch port is in? Where's it wired on the network? The use case for somebody on the network team could be, hey, this device is not getting the right policy. It's located here. We don't even expect it to be here. So when they're trying to do analysis around something, instead of going to their platform and going, I need the MAC address from the Biomed person, and they're like, well, I don't deal with MACs. I deal with serial numbers. So it's very hard to stitch those pieces together, whereas our platform gives you a place where I'm going to stitch the MAC address with the serial number, with the model number, and also just bring you the map so you can see it right here. Okay. For security teams, maybe we're seeing some unusual activity on the network. Something is hitting our DLP. What is that device? They don't have the context. It's very difficult. IP and the MAC address does not give you the context about the device. Or if it does, it's kind of sometimes erroneous. Like we talked about, the Zebra printer or scanner looks like something like that, but it's actually an infusion pump. We now give you the context. So in their devices, in their systems, they can see us telling them, hey, this is actually an infusion pump. We can even tell you what group it's responsibility. It's Biomed, it's this team. So we do all these types of things together. VLAN, what VLAN is it currently sitting on? Why is it on that VLAN, right? These are very difficult things to like stitch together normally, and our system just does it dynamically.